Today, we've got a story for you, and it's a wild one. It's about how a major psychological theory, one that basically shaped how we understood things like depression and resilience for 50 years, was turned completely upside down by modern neuroscience. It's an incredible example of how science works, how it corrects itself, and trust me, it has huge implications for how you and I think about stress and control in our own lives. So let's just start with this question, just to get your wheels turning. What if that feeling of giving up? You know, when things get tough and you just stop trying. What if that isn't something you learn from bad experiences? What if that's actually our brain's factory setting, its default mode? And what we really have to learn is how to get up and fight back. Okay, let's dive in. This whole story kicks off back in the 1960s with an experiment that led to a result that was, well, it was deeply confusing and honestly pretty troubling for the scientists involved. So picture this. Researchers are studying fear conditioning. They have these dogs in a hammock, and they expose them to some mild but totally inescapable electric shocks. The next day, they put these same dogs into a totally new environment, a box where they could easily just hop over a little wall to escape the shocks. But here's the weird part. A lot of the dogs, they didn't even try. They just laid down and passively took it. This complete failure to act, that was the real mystery that needed solving. Now, this absolutely baffling behavior gave rise to a really elegant and, frankly, powerful theory. It was an idea that would go on to dominate the world of psychology for the next 50 years. And they called it learned helplessness. The theory was just so intuitive. The dogs had learned that their actions didn't matter. They built up this mental expectation that, hey, nothing I do makes a difference, and then they carried that belief into the new situation. And that's why they gave up. It seemed to explain everything perfectly. But here is the really brilliant part, how they proved it. They used this amazing triadic design. You had 3 groups. Group 1 could stop the shocks by pressing a little panel. Group 2 got the exact same shocks at the exact same time, but their panel did nothing. They had 0 control. And Group 3, well, they were the lucky ones. No shocks at all. And look at the results. The next day, only the group that had inescapable shock failed to learn how to escape. This was the smoking gun. It wasn't the pain of the shock that caused the problem. It was the feeling of uncontrollability. So this theory was neat, it was tidy, and it was hugely influential. There was just one teeny tiny problem. After decades of new research, neuroscience came along and revealed that this incredibly intuitive idea had it completely, fundamentally, 100% backwards. And this quote right here is the mic drop moment. Get this. It's from the very same scientists who came up with the original theory, writing 50 years later. They're saying that passivity is not something that's learned. It's the default. It's what the brain just does. I mean, wow. Talk about a massive shift. So let's just make this crystal clear. The old idea was, our natural starting point is having agency, and bad experiences teach us to be helpless. The new science flips that completely. The brain's default reaction to long-term stress is helplessness. What we actually have to learn is that we have control. Agency isn't where we start, it's an achievement we have to unlock. So to understand how science could get something so big, so wrong, for so long, we need to pop the hood and look at the brain's actual wiring. We're going to meet 2 key players in what you could call the brain's control circuit. All right, first up, meet the dorsal raphe nucleus, or DRN. You can think of this as a very old, very primitive passivity engine. When it gets fired up by a lot of stress, it starts pumping out serotonin, which actually stops you from trying to escape and dials up your anxiety. Then you've got the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, or VMPFC. This is a much more evolved part of the brain. It's our control center, the part that figures out, hey, I can do something here. My actions matter. Okay, so check out how this circuit actually works. A big stressor comes along and the default passivity engine, that DRN, it just fires up. But, and this is the crucial part, if our control center, the VMPFC, sees that we actually have some control, it sends a powerful stop signal right down to the DRN and shuts it off. So the big insight here isn't that a lack of control teaches the brain something new. It's that the presence of control actively slams the brakes on the brain's default, built-in passive response. Now, this is way more than just about lab animals and shocks. This brain circuit has really profound implications for how we understand chronic stress in our day-to-day lives, whether it's at work, at home, or with our finances. And this is why it matters on a massive global scale. According to Heal magazine, nearly half of the world's population lives below the poverty line. Now, just think about that. That's a widespread, chronic, and very often uncontrollable stressor that is constantly activating this default passivity circuit in billions with a B of people.
This kind of never-ending stress puts the brain into something called survival mode. It's this altered state where your focus just narrows to, how do I get through today? And when you're in that state, that passivity engine, your DRN, is just constantly humming in the background, keeping you on high alert.
And living in that state, day in and day out, takes a huge physical toll on the brain. It impairs your hippocampus, which messes with your memory. It dysregulates your amygdala, making your emotions go haywire. And it actually weakens your prefrontal cortex, the very control center you need to plan your way out of the problem. It becomes this really vicious cycle. So if helplessness is the default, are we just doomed? How do we fight back and build resilience? Well, the science gives us a really clear answer. We have to actively train our brain's control center.
And this is where the story gets really hopeful. Researchers discovered that you can actually immunize the brain against future helplessness. Every single time you experience having control over something, no matter how small, it physically strengthens that pathway from your VMPFC down to your DRN. Your brain literally rewires itself to build a powerful expectation that it will have control in the future.
And this chart just shows it perfectly. It's night and day. On the left, a brain with no prior experience of control defaults to high passivity. But on the right, a brain that's been immunized by previous experiences of control is way more resilient. Their brain has learned to expect to be in control. And the name the scientists gave this? Oh, it's just perfect. They call it the hope circuit. And that all leads us to this final, really powerful question. If passivity is the brain's default reaction to things that happened in the past or are happening right now, and resilience is built by creating an expectation of future control, then where should we focus our energy? Should we be dissecting our past, asking why did this happen? Or should we be looking forward and asking whither, which is just a fancy way of saying, where do we go from here? This new science suggests that building that sense of future agency, that might just be the most powerful tool we have for overriding our brain's oldest, most helpless instincts.